I guess I'll bait onto this, even though my channel's not even about sci-fi or Doctor Who. But this guy actually asked for comments on what other people thought. So this guy, he looks a little bit like James T. Kirk, doesn't he, from the original Star Trek series? I guess he'll probably like that comment. But he's called another sci-fi guy. So I've actually just found out. I find out that there is going to be a Doctor Who Christmas special, but next Christmas, so we've got to wait all till next year, from this guy, and he's actually just uploaded this pretty much 11 hours ago, right? They're not going to have one this year. So I thought I'd give my opinion, right? And there's people, I didn't even know that Disney were involved with Doctor Who. I don't know how I managed to miss that. Maybe I'm not looking at the screen properly when they play it. As far as I knew, Doctor Who's made by the BBC and it's made in Wales, right? So I just thought it was a BBC thing, but apparently they had Disney involved in it. I must be like blind when I'm looking at the screen. I remember seeing that wolf logo, right? But that's how much attention I pay to it anyway, in the background when I'm doing stuff. So, right, this is what I'd like to say to this sci-fi guy if he's listening. I don't know if he bothers to listen, but he says that he likes to get feedback. Although I will not be buying him anything from his Amazon list because, like, if he hadn't, why help Jeff Bezos get rich? You know, this is the problem with the world, right? So, firstly, right, this sci-fi guy, he says that he doesn't watch Doctor Who. He doesn't like to get involved in the politics of it, right? But by coming out with that statement, right, he admits that there's some politics to it and that the politics exist in it, right? Because he just said that there was some in it, right? So he's just admitting that there are politics in it and it is become political merely by raising that in his he raises that issue and admits it, right? But he says that he doesn't pay attention to it, right? The current modern Doctor Who show is pure politics now. It, in fact, really only exists to be political. And the BBC are going to be impartial, right, and unbiased. But it's purely 100% political now. It's there to make a political point, a lot of it, and be relevant to what's happening in some way, right? But also pushing all these diversity and inclusion and all these other things that the BBC have to do now. But apparently they've got to do it, right? You know, they've got to have people in wheelchairs in there, or they've got to have disabled people in there for diversity and inclusion, right? Whereas before, you know, you didn't have to do that. But now apparently they've got to. So when you start with a blank sheet of paper, if you're going to come up with a Doctor Who episode, you can't actually have a blank sheet of paper because apparently there's already some rules written down, like it's got to have this, and that in it, right? Before you even start with a blank sheet, right? Now, I just want to tell this sci-fi guy where I actually came into Doctor Who from, right? I wouldn't mind telling him, like, my background. So, I am English, right? I'm an English person. I'm an English citizen, right? I grew up in what I like to call a normal family, right? And my family is kind of like, gradually progressed and done all right in life, right? And I think my views growing up as a kid, I think, I'm a good person to ask about their general viewpoint, right? I'm not what you call obsessive fan. I'm not even really a fan of Doctor Who, right? And I don't watch TV. I try not to watch TV, right? But I did watch TV when I was growing up and watched cartoons and enjoyed them and stuff like that. But that wasn't like what life was about, because you go out to the park and play out and go out with friends, have other interests in different things, right? It was just certain things were on TV and you watch them on certain days, right? But now I think with YouTube, people are watching the BBC and main channels and ITV less and less and giving money to all these YouTube channels and just watching one channel, the same thing all the time, right? And even throwing money at that. And I think it's a little bit obsessive, right? Surely if you're watching one person all the time, it's almost kind of like you're treating them as your friends, or they are your friends, but they're not really, because you've got if you've got 10,000 people watching, you can't really be friends with 10,000 people. It's not a real true relationship or friendship. It's a one-way one, no matter how much they say thanks and how much they say, oh yeah, we love all our fans and that, it cannot be two-way. It's actually physically impossible. You can't read 10,000 comments and respond to 10,000 people and have a life and even also make videos as well. I don't really like the way that actually reality is going at the moment. And that's the thing. A lot of these programs and shows used to have morals in them. And now it just seems to see that all those morals have completely gone. But anyway, so when I grew up, right, I don't know if Sci-Fi Guy is interested in this, but I'm going to tell him anyway, right? When I grew up, right, I, was watching stuff like, He-Man, Thundercats and the A-Team and stuff like that, right? We had Play School, Jamie and the Magic Torch, cartoon. Oddly, I always saw the intro for that cartoon, but I never saw a full episode. I don't know what happened to it. It was very strange. They played the intro, but they didn't play the cartoon, and I don't know what was going on with that, right? But we also had Sport Billy as well. So Sport Billy, I probably can't really remember anything earlier than the Sport Billy cartoons. But I remember Play School and Jack and Ori Story and stuff like that, right? Now, with Doctor Who, I think it will have been around the Tom Baker sort of years. So Doctor Who's older than me, right? So Doctor Who is started before I was even here, right? And I never used to watch it. So it's not like, it's not my program. It's not like, I've been watching it from the start. I don't claim any sort of like attachment to it or I don't claim like I have a right to, make any, I don't try and make out, it's like my program or anything like that. Or some people who've watched it from the start will say, we've been fans from the start of it and blah, 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 whatever, right? But this is my opinion, right? So the first contact that I ever had with Doctor Who or knowledge of it existing was probably seeing the K9 toys, right? I probably saw the K9 toys. I might have even had the K9 toy. I can't remember if I had it or not, but I either had it or had contact with it. Someone had it, right? And the TARDIS toys, right? The actual TARDIS and the annuals, right? They had the annuals, which were kind of like, it had the characters in them, and it wasn't the comic. I didn't see the comic because I wasn't a comic person. I only had comics if I went to the seaside and I went to like the little newspaper shop at the seaside and they had comics in there and I might have got a Dandy or a Beano or something like that, right? But I wasn't like a comic person other than that, other than further than the odd Dandy and Beano now and again in the holiday season, right? So like I was familiar with comics, just the standard sort of, main characters. So, but the annuals, we used to get annuals. Like, you could get annuals for all kinds of stuff, and it had games in them, and it had questions, and it told you a bit of information about different things, and they would have photographs of things. So, I had contact with those annuals, so I knew Tom Baker, looking at him, that's Doctor Who, right? And possibly even, I would also know Davidson as well, in his costume, and I would know, like, I don't think that at that point, I knew that Hartnell ever existed, or the second Doctor, right? Patrick Troughton. But I knew that Tom Baker existed, and K9, and Davidson. So I don't think at that point I knew of Pertwee as a Doctor Who. But I did know of Pertwee as Wurzel Gummidge, right? So I only really knew of Pertwee as Wurzel Gummidge. So Pertwee to me was Wurzel Gummidge. I did grow up on Wurzel Gummidge, right? Which I really loved that show. It was a brilliant programme, right? I really liked that and stuff like the Box of Delights. And in fact, I really, really enjoyed the Box of Delights. That was one of the really main programmes that I enjoyed, right? So I knew like the Doctor Who characters, and I knew that it existed, and I saw it, but I can't remember watching the programmes at all. I knew what a Dalek was. Oh yeah, the Dalek toys as well. I never really bought them. I never actually really bought them. I might have had that K9, but only like because it was something a bit novel, like they had the attack track thing that you could program into the attack track, and like it would go around the floor and go where you programmed it to go, and it had a trailer on it and stuff like that, right? So now that was it. I knew it existed. I knew it was there. I knew like there was Doctor Who, and I'm English, right? You know, I should know what Doctor Who is, but I didn't watch it, right? I didn't like watch Doctor Who. Now, so I'm a little kid, and then, you know, like I go to school, you know, and grow up, right? And then I end up going to high school. Now, when I started going to high school, right, I don't think that I can't remember watching a full Doctor Who or even watching it, but I knew what it was because I'm English, right? And it's you know, I know that it's Doctor Who. So when I came home from school, right, when I was at high school, I would put the TV on, okay? Obviously, when you're young, you're going out with your friends or, you know, riding your bikes or playing out, or you got loads of different things to do, right? You just like watch TV all the time. In fact, I don't think it's a good thing to just watch TV all the time. But I did. Now, it must have just been one kind of, you know, I must have been going through like phases and cycles of doing certain things. Like, you know, I might have got into the habit of, you know, coming home and putting the TV on for a while, and then I might have been doing other stuff, right? But so I really only properly watched Doctor Who, I would say, while the Sylvester McCoy series was on, right? So that is when I like sat down and watched Doctor Who, and then obviously it would be one episode, and then it stopped, and you'd have to find out what happened and wait till the next day, right? You know, the next. I can't even remember whether you had to wait a whole week or whether it was on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I can't remember that, right? But I knew that. So I was watching the one with McCoy where they've got the Cybermen and that Silver Arrow, you know, and they've got a Cyberman spaceship, and like the medieval couple travel through time. So that was on that through that series, and also I must have just caught the one when, you know, the Daleks are in that school. There's like a little school around the corner from the cafe, and then, you know, they've got UNIT and so forth, and that as well. So it will have probably been spread between. I might have just seen the one before as well, maybe one or two of them. Well, Paradise Towers. I saw. I don't know if I watched the full Paradise Towers, but that's the section. Like we're looking at like 3 series. And I might have like watched maybe the last 2 of one of them, and then the whole series of the other, and then the first 2 of the other, or something like that. It just happened to be like over about, you know, a month or 2 when I was actually going down, turn it on, start watching it, right? So that's my proper really like, okay, so I'll take a look at this thing, and, you know, and oh, yeah, well, I know it's Doctor Who, I saw Doctor Who's on, right? So that's it. Now, I'd never seen all of the series. I hadn't seen, you know, I knew that K9 existed. I know what it is, right? And I know what TARDIS is, and I know what Dalek is, and I know that, you know, Doctor Who, and I know like Tom Baker, and I know like that Davidson guy, right? And the costumes and that, and I know that they're Doctor Who's, but I had not actually watched them all, okay? Now, I must not have seen that movie. Maybe I did watch that movie. Maybe I did see the movie. Maybe I didn't. I don't know if I did or not, right? But then after high school, I'm sort of growing up and going out and blah, 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 and doing stuff, right? And then I guess, obviously, they stopped it for a while, didn't they? And then it wasn't until they brought it back in with that guy from Manchester with a leather jacket on, and they started did it. Then it was all like, from then on, it's like completely and totally different thing. It's like totally, when you're looking at the screen, it's a totally different presentation and style, using different types of cameras and everything. So it's like proper, you know, movie style, whatever, right? You know, movie quality show with special effects and all the rest of it. Now, being honest, right? I mean, through this whole time, there's other stuff on, like, Terminator, Terminator 2, all these other, Point Break. There's films, right? I watch films, right? I went to the cinema, we rented videos out, we got films, like, I'm not a stranger to movies at all. I'll never say, like, I'm a movie fan, right? I've never really been a fan person, right? I don't, like, obsess. I try not to obsess over things, right? But I think that I was never. I can't say that I was overly impressed with with the new ones. It's like, I mean, so from then on, I mean, I had a life. I think that this is the thing, right? This is my opinion. As I like to try and think that I've grown up, and I can give an average opinion, right? The more of a better life that you have, the less TV you watch, because you've actually got a life and you're doing stuff, right? If you've got a life, you don't watch TV, right? If you've got friends, or if you like making things, or if you like drawing, or whatever it is, so you're doing that, right? Even if you like programming computer games, like you're programming computer games, right? You're doing that, right? Or whatever it is. So I think that, in general, anyway, TV is for people who don't have a life or don't go out as much. Now, maybe some people like to be by themselves, or that's what they like. If you like TV, then fair enough. So maybe TV is for people who, that's what they like. They like TV. And I'm not knocking anyone who likes TV, and that, if that's what they choose, what the thing that they want to do is, right? In my life, I like TV, and that's what I want to do, and I just want to, churn up whatever they throw at me, right? Fair enough, right? If that's your thing, then fair enough, right? But for me, going to the movies or watching a film or video is, like, usually something you do because you haven't got anything else to do, right? Like, oh, what should we do? Because if you get to the question of, like, oh, what should we do? Oh, we'll go watch that new movie. Then you're sat there saying, oh, what should we do? So you haven't got anything to do. So the fact that you have to sit there and say, oh, what should we do? Because you don't know, because you haven't got anything to do. So, like, say, oh, we'll go to the cinema. Right, if you had something to do, then you wouldn't be sat there saying, oh, what should we do, right? Because you'd be doing something. Oh, yeah. I mean, I did actually watch Star Trek a lot when I grew up. Star Trek was on quite a lot. And the A-Team, things like that. Because just they were on. I don't really know what happened with Doctor Who. It must have been on when I was sat in a different room, but maybe I was a bit too young to follow it then. I'm not sure, but however they presented it, it must have been on at a funny time when I was, like, when I was, like, before high school time. It must have been on at a particular time which I just didn't watch it. It must have been maybe it was kind of on later. I don't know, or on a particular day. That's the excuse that I give. Otherwise, if it was on, I just wasn't old enough to really, like, understand or follow it. But I definitely didn't. I can't say that I watched Tom Baker or I watched Davidson, or I could tell you, like, what happened in an episode. Not to that attention span. He probably had been on while I'd been sat watching the TV, but not to any sense that I was following what was going on or anything like that. Put it that way. But so coming back to the new ones after 2000, right, and taking into the account, I'm not, I'm not from the Middle Ages or anything. It's like, I know what a freaking film is, right? I know what it is to watch, Point Break or Terminator 2 or something like that, right? Like cars, action, whatever. Or Star Wars, stuff like that, and Aliens, even like scary films and stuff like that. To be honest, I will mention this, right? Around that, probably before that McCoy time, not long before it, I can remember the seeing some horror films, right? Like there was some like, can you remember those Garbage Pail Kids or Cabbage Patch Kids? It was a horror film, and it was a bit like that, and they had these weird orange slimy babies born from these Cabbage Patch things, and I really didn't actually like it. In fact, I was actually quite scary, and I can remember having thoughts. It put thoughts into my head which were quite distasteful and frightening thoughts, even when I went out playing, right? And to be honest, I I've never really been a fan of horror films. I don't really like them. I'm not the greatest fan of them. If they're kind of quite interesting or whatever, or they've got some kind of nostalgia to them, fair enough. But I'm not the greatest fan of nasty, scary horror films. I think that they're quite upsetting and distressing, to be honest. But anyway, so for Doctor Who after 2000, what do I actually think of it when I was actually watching it? Well, I think that I definitely have seen at least one or a handful of episodes with at least all of the Doctors which followed on from the year 2000. But I never sat down and watched it and then waited for the next episode and watched it to find out what happened, and then waited for the next episode to find out what happened, and then followed it. What I will say is that I've seen a few of the episodes with, that Manchester guy, and I've seen a few with each of them, right? 1 or 2 episodes here and there, right? And, I thought it was all right, but I wasn't that bothered about, watching it and following it every episode. And I don't think it could have been that. It clearly, maybe, maybe that's the thing, And what I find now with these recent ones, it's like when we've got sort of like the Robot Revolution or Lux or The Well or Lucky Day or the ones that I'm looking at on the screen now, there's only some. They're kind of like a full episode in one. So like it's the whole thing that happens is in the one episode, and then the whole thing that happens is in the next episode. And then the cliffhanger at the end kind of goes into a different story, right? Although it is all one continuum, but that's what's different from those classic ones, is that the one story is separated through, maybe 4 to 8 episodes or whatever, and you have to wait to find out what happens in that one story. But they seem to have scrapped that basis now. I can't say that I was impressed with the fast action and sci-fi stuff of any of them that happened after 2000 at all. It's not like I've just been like, wow. It's like, for me, I just bought the Han Solo movie, and I didn't even know that they'd made one, right? I just happened to find it, and I bought it for £1.50 on eBay, right? Someone sold it to me, and I watched it, and although I was glad to find out the backstory and what happened, even though it's not like a proper official original one, right? It was just like all moving stuff, and like, it was just like action, and there was never a point when there wasn't some thing flying around or someone going somewhere, and it just didn't have enough story or interest or anything to follow. It was just like pure action, and look, we can create a million just for the sake of, or we can make all these things look real, and because we can. And I think when you're young, that's cool, but when you're older, it's just action for the sake of action and making it look real because you can do it, not because like there isn't actually really any. It's not well balanced at all. Maybe like if you're watching, Keanu Reeves film, like Point Break, there's an actual story to it, and there are characters, and then there might be 1 or 2 action scenes in it, like if they're having a car chase, or like, when you're setting a petrol station on fire or something like that. But it's not like just constant all the way through. I think they were trying to do that with the Speed film, Speed and Speed 2. They were trying to make it so like they had these scenes where it was all fast carrying it through. That's what I kind of felt like when I was watching that Solo film. And I think that's what Doctor Who seems to do. But the problem with Doctor Who is that they have these characters and they say these things and they've got all these lines and scripts and stuff like that. But when you actually are focused and follow it and listen to it, some of it is actually a load of nonsense, and it doesn't actually make that much sense. And I'm starting to like think that it's all kind of like, I don't know, for the sake of it. Now, saying that, I have to say that there are some good episodes more recently, like the Lux thing. Okay, that was a good idea. They did Doctor Who in a cartoon and they stylized it like classic cartoon. That was a good idea, right? It was a great idea, right? I can't say that I like the whole story, the whole thing, but there were some good ideas in it, right? And it did have a story to it. The well one, I really enjoyed that. I thought that was good. They've obviously got diversity and inclusion in that as well, because they had like a character who had some disabilities. I don't really have a problem with that. Now, the thing with the well is it was a little bit like Aliens, right? It had like the feel of the Aliens movie to it, and they were like this soldier military element. I actually thought the acting was good in it. There's not really anything wrong with the acting. The acting's really good. I'm not knocking the acting, right? The story for the well was good, but when I actually found out it was based on a previous Doctor Who, when I went back to watch it, when they went to that Diamond Planet, Midnight or whatever, and that was a peculiar episode. To be honest, I didn't think the tie-in from it and how they developed the alien character was done that well, right? I didn't think it was that brilliant. I think that the concept of it and the idea, the program was filmed brilliantly and the acting was great in it, and I like the feeling of that well one, for example. But there were just some letdowns in it where the ideology behind the alien thing, right? Now, if an alien is developed on a completely strange planet which is purely made out of diamonds, right, it wouldn't even have any contact or experience or know what a human was, right? And how would it know how to act or behave, or what was good or bad behaviour or whatever? And then when they had that holiday place there, it didn't seem like they'd had any contact with it, until like there was that incident and it went off course. So it's like they were treating this creature as if it was evil or bad, but this is, if that's only our first contact it's had with people, then it itself is having a brand new or strange experience itself. So and then there was some weird things about how it moved around the way it was, and I guess it leaves stuff to the imagination. But some of these programs are okay, right? And there's I really like the Halloween Apocalypse, and it really was great to have it at Halloween, right? We won't get Halloween one next time, and we haven't had one this time, right? I thought that Halloween Apocalypse was good, and it was pretty cool to have what do you call him in? John Bishop, right? It was pretty cool to have John Bishop in there as well, right? The Sontaran characters are pretty cool. There was a lot of good things in that whole series through the Halloween Apocalypse, War of the Sontarans, and all through the whole thing. Some of it was a bit rubbish, but I didn't actually mind watching it, to be honest. But the thing is, they're concentrating on, there's a hell of a lot of different things they're concentrating on in these at the moment. And this is a thing when this sci-fi guy is saying, like, he's going like, oh, I don't want to concentrate on the politics parts. Right, there's shit happening in the world now as we speak, right? There's some really, really, really serious, important things happening in the world right now. If you aren't getting wrapped up in the politics part of it, or aren't recognising the political elements in it, then there's something wrong with you, and you don't even know what the fuck's going on. There's relevance with some things that were happening now, right, which are actually happening now. But this is the thing, and can we trust these people who are making these programmes, also, the thing with the BBC is they can be a set of gits as well and wind people up. There's a lot of wind-up elements in it as well. And I don't really want to go... He says he don't want to go into this politics too much. I don't really want to go into the politics too much side of that. But, Jodie Whittaker is from near where I am now. Where I'm speaking now, she's from literally in walking distance, right? So when I said that I didn't really watch it through many of the previous Doctors, right? I didn't watch every series. I can remember that I was watching... I'll tell you what I did watch, though. I watched that Three Musketeers. I watched that Three Musketeers programme when it was on, and I was watching all of those. I watched the whole series, right? But I wasn't watching all of the Doctor Who's. because I was going out, I was doing stuff, I had a life, right? But that Musketeers thing got my attention, and I watched that, and I actually quite like it. I might actually, I'd probably go on there now and watch it again, or I did actually watch it again a few months ago, right? But not the Doctor Who's. But from when around the time we had the pandemic and lockdown, they had Jodie Whittaker, and she's from my area, so I watched it because it's like, it's got someone on who's like from my area, like, kind of like representing our county and home area. So I started watching every episode from around the time when Jodie Whittaker became the Doctor, but I hadn't realised that she was the new Doctor Who straight away. I think they'd already got into the first series by the time that I'd started watching it. But so from then on, I have been watching it, and I've been watching it like every time it's on. And I've been watching all of them since from when Jodie Whittaker's been on, right? So I wouldn't say that I'm a fan of it, but I've actually been watching it, and I guess I've been a critic of Doctor Who from when Jodie Whittaker has appeared. So I haven't really been a critic of it from when that Manchester guy with the leather jacket, when he turned up, and then through the other Doctors in between. And I know who they are, but I know what they look like, and I know who they are, but I mean, then it's not Benedict Cumberbatch, the other guy. You see, I don't even know. I probably can't tell you off the top of my head the actual actors' names for all of them in between either, but I know who they are, right? But I did know their names, but they don't pop into my head right now for some strange reason. But anyway, so those Doctors. Why I didn't like it and why I didn't watch it and follow the series is just because it wasn't appealing to me, because the Doctor's companions, right, didn't appeal to me, and none of the female characters appealed to me either, and the stories were just all right, okay, They were okay. I didn't think they were that brilliant, so I just didn't watch every episode or follow it, right? Not from what I can remember. But these new ones, right? I would say that I've only been watching it because of the political content of it. I've only been watching it since Jodie Whittaker went in it because it has got political content, because I recognise that there are some issues in it that they seem to be hinting at, which we are going through. Like, they had some characters who were sort of like a little bit like Extinction Rebellion-y sort of characters and things like that, right? And obviously, I don't really know whether the BBC are just joshing with us or winding us up or what. We don't know. But, there's something happening in the show that's going on relevant to what's happening in the world, right? And there is some really serious, important things in the world. In fact, Bill Gates has just... Bill Shatner, Bill Gates, William Shatner, William Gates. Gates has just announced that he has got a world domination plan of having a political and money system for the whole planet, right? So if that ain't news, what is? A guy has just officially, actually now it's like an official statement, it's not just people like rumours. Oh yeah, I am planning a global political system and money network. So it's like, but yeah, who's going to vote for it? You can't just do it unless people vote for it. Now, this is the thing. If you're in England and you're a registered voter and you have influence on your voting or what you do or don't vote for from outside of the country, it's called election propaganda. It's illegal. So if someone who is not registered to vote in England, like Bill Gates, tries to influence people in England who turn up at a polling station to vote a certain way, like for his global digital ID thing, that's actually called election propaganda, and it's illegal. So I don't know actually how he's going to do it, except coercing British MPs to go along with it, right? But yet, if British MPs choose to go along with it, they're actually going along with what a foreign country wants to do, and they're meant to be accountable to the voters in England, right? But if the voters in England are under influence from a foreign entity, then that's illegal, right? And this is a thing that the Election Commission can't get their head around. So this is the thing. It's the political side of it is mandatory now. Now, there are a hell of a lot of programmes on the BBC and ITV now. They've made it almost kind of like Netflixy sort of thing. There's so many shows. I don't know where they're getting the money from. There's been a lot of people complaining about the BBC licence fee and saying that they don't want to pay it. And if more people are watching YouTube and putting their money into YouTube, throwing their money at super chats and YouTube channels and joining clubs like that and not wanting to pay a licence fee, I don't really know how the BBC can continue, but they're also coming up with these new programmes, spin-off programmes, like they had Torchwood. I never watched that. Now they've got the war between the land and the sea. Where they're getting the money from that, it must be good business. I don't know where they're getting the viewers from. It must be this population boost or all these immigrants coming into the country. If a large population, if everyone used to watch mainstream TV and now people don't, I really want to see where the figures have split. How are they managing to do more programs than they used to do before if actually less people are watching it and they're watching YouTube? Or are they just watching everything? Are they watching it on YouTube? I'd like to know. But the BBC seem to be affording more and more and more programs. They've got Death in Paradise, and then they've got Beyond Paradise, and now they've got... It's like multiplying. Every show is like its own living thing now that multiplies and multiplies and multiplies. Now, if the population's not multiplying and if people haven't got any more hours in a day, how are they going to have time to watch all these different things when there's only 7 days a week and 24 hours in a day? When does it stop? And, this is the thing, right? This is really important. When I used to watch TV programs, right, I never really went out of my way to find out more about them or to be a boffin and to be a SWAT on them and know every single actor and every single character and every single thing. Some people did, right? They could go on TV game shows and tell you everything about it, all of the fans, right? But I always actually thought it was to not know about it, to not go behind the scenes on the set, to not meet the actors, to not actually be there while they're filming it. It's a mystery, and it's that like suspense and that unknowing, the whole point of an enigma, right? They're meant to be making something that isn't real, because we all live in real life when we go to work. We all live in real life when we go shopping. We all live in real life when we go on holiday. The whole point of science fiction, the whole point of making something which can't exist or is because you're making it pretend, right? So when you're watching Doctor Who, and when it's a fantasy show, and when it's like science fiction and pretend, that's the whole point, because like they're trying to pretend that it's real, but it's not. And that is the mystery about it. Now, if you go on the set when they're filming it and you just find out, it's just a bloke walking up and down in front of a camera and they're all just normal people, and then you open the back studio and then it's just on the back street, and with a motorbike going past or whatever and someone loading in the back of a van, that's just normal reality now. That's what now people are doing this whole thing where, they go to the conventions and they meet the heroes and it's all like, excitement, excitement, excitement and all that. But it's like, the whole point in what you're doing it to make that recording. But now with all these behind the scenes and the fan channels and all these programs, there are more programs about the actors and about fans meeting the actors and about going behind the scenes and then fans turning up and dressing up in the costumes or putting the character outfits on and all these other things, that there are actually more programs about the making of the programs and behind the scenes or into the life of the actors than the actual show itself. So it's kind of like got to the point where it seems like there's as much, or if not more, interest in the celebrities and the behind the scenes than actually watching the episode, which was all to be what it's made. And it seems to be like they're wanting to get everyone in on it. This is the whole thing. It's like, and the thing is, it's like, hey, now it's about, in fact, rather than the whole point of getting everyone together to make a pretend show which can give someone some enjoyment, now it seems to be there are more programs based around the show and the what behind the scenes and the fan stuff, and they're actually wanting everyone to be able to be, almost like have the star in Hollywood, like have the experience of, as if they were to be in the show or be part of it. So it seems like the BBC is trying to encourage people to want to, if they could, they would actually have everyone actually in the show or on it. And then they could all be, so it seems like it's about being a famous celebrity star and the life of being a celebrity than it is to actually just watch and enjoy the thing that they've made. So it's almost like that Passenger thing in a way that sucks everyone in. They're trying to get everyone to be in the show. But the thing about once you're in the show is you can't just do what you want, because you have to do what the director and producer say in the script says, right? And this is the thing about, are they trying to coerce us all into this some sort of like the Chinese government system of, do as you're told or you'll be punished, you know what I mean? And this is why the politics of it are important. It's highly political at the moment. In fact, that's the only reason to watch it, really, other than, there are some good ideas for the themes of them and stuff like that. But otherwise, it's probably over 50%, if not up to, I would say, like, more than half of it is, relevant to what's happening now and political, with a few, they've still got a few different ideas in there, but I don't think all of the ideas are that brilliant, to be honest. Now, in contrast, what does that mean in relation to what Doctor Who is supposed to be, or what it even originally was, right? Well, this is the thing. Last Christmas, I hadn't realised that they've put all of the whole Doctor Who up on the website, like all of the full classic series. Obviously, they've got some missing episodes, right? Now, when I think I'd noticed that they got them on there while I'd been watching these new series. I think I'd just noticed it, but it hadn't really sort of clicked and caught my attention, right? Because I wasn't really watching the BBC generally, right? So, like, last Christmas, I was like, oh yeah, they've got the whole series on there. And guess what? I haven't actually watched them all. I don't actually even really know properly how Doctor Who started and even what it is. So I was like, well, actually, wow. So last Christmas, I was like, actually, just a minute, they've got the whole damn bloody series on here. It's like, oh, right, I can watch it all from the start. I'll do that. So what I did over last Christmas, from, leading up to Christmas Eve, all through until like New Year's Eve, I was like actually watching them all. In fact, it took quite a while to watch them all. I wanted to watch it from start to finish. So I watched it from the very first episode all the way through to the end of McCoy, right? And actually, I definitely remember that Cat series when I watched that. I watched the Cat series with the Master. That's around the time McCoy was with us, Cybermen as well. So I must have watched quite a few of the McCoy ones when I was coming in from school. I will admit that I didn't really follow it or understand it. I didn't really know what exactly was going on, because obviously I knew who the Master was. I knew, oh, that's the Master, right? This is the Master. He's one of the Doctor's foes, right? But because I didn't know I hadn't watched Doctor Who from the start. I hadn't seen every episode. I don't know much about the Master. So, like, what's the Master doing in this cat planet place? And his eyes are going funny, It's like, and for the reason that if you're just coming home from school and it's only showing you a certain section of it and then it stops and then you have to wait until the next bit and then you're going out and playing out and doing loads of things and you forget about it, I wouldn't have said that at that age I was in the best position to actually be completely and totally following it anyway. It's not like you can, it's not like you can just rewind it like you can now and then watch it again and then watch it again and say, all right, I was like, not quite paying attention there. I was eating my tea or whatever, or I was thinking about something else, or I was watching it and it made me think of, the Thundercats or something, right? It's like now that you watch it, and if you didn't understand it, then you can rewind it and watch it again, and then you watch it a few times, and then if there's something that you don't quite get in it or missing it or whatever, then you can soak in, right? You can soak it in and sink it in, or if you don't get one of the comments in it. I mean, even now, for some strange reason, like with like when they're going through the when they've got the Halloween apocalypse and the War of the Centaurans, Once Upon a Time, Survivors of the Flux and the Vanquishers, etc. They've got that one when they've got the professor in the house, right? And they've got that woman there, and he's like got that thing on her head, and the angels come into the house, right? I kept watching it, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, I didn't know how she got into the professor's house or why she was there. And for some strange reason, I was thinking the whole thing, there's that much going on, and it's actually while I'm watching it, it's making me think of other things. I still didn't realise that, it's the woman who was walking home to her door, and then the angels was following her, and then obviously she thought she was going mad or whatever. That's why she'd go to see a psychiatrist. So it's like, it's like a brand new scene. Here's just this random woman who happens to be at this psychiatrist's house. Why would she be there? Is she volunteered for an experiment or what? Oh, she's gone there because she's been chased by these angels. There's little things like that, which, maybe I'm just retarded. Maybe I'm just a really rubbish story follower. But I would suggest that it's because that whole series was broken up on purpose to be flashing between different people and different stories and different scenes and mashing it up, that sometimes when I'm watching it, I can't it's actually making you just have a little bit of a daydream while you're watching it, sometimes thinking about other stuff. So to actually proper follow it and to proper know what's going on, I think you have to watch it quite a few times, particularly when you're getting distracted or things in it are making you think of other things, right? Unless you're just completely and totally, unless you don't have an imagination and you don't actually think of anything else at all, right? So, now going back, so what happened with the classic series? Well, this is it. I'm like, wow. I get to I'm going to watch Doctor Who now. I was like, I haven't even, I never knew what Doctor Who was. So now I'm going to find out actually what it is. And so I watched it all the way through them all. And, some of them were terrible. Like, for example, off the top of my head, they've got one where with Hartnell when they're on an insect planet. And it's literally... I've seen worse, I've seen better sets on a pantomime, if you go to the theatre and go to a pantomime, right? It's some of the costumes and the sets were just so terrible that they were hardly believable. But there's a comedy element to that as well, right? And so I think some of those were missing. But, for the time it was made, I suppose it wasn't too bad. But in contrast, some of the Hartnell ones were absolutely brilliant, and the settings and backdrops and aliens were outstanding. So there's definitely a wide variation in the set in the backdrops and sets. Could hugely vary in quality depending on who the producer or the writer was or whatever. It was heavily varied in the quality of it over over the Hartnell series. It was really believable to not believable. But what I will say, so the start of it, so it starts, as you will know, with Hartnell is got his TARDIS in this kind of shed thing, and his daughter's going to school in our time, but they're obviously from the other time, right? And then the teachers kind of get suspicious of her, and then come find her, and then they become their first companions, right? So that's how it starts. So I was like, all right. And then they literally get thrown straight into it. So you've got the first Dalek planet with the Daleks there, and then you've got other series. That I thought that Space Museum was absolutely brilliant. Just the suspense all the way through it. I mean, some people you would have thought, I'll just fall asleep, right? Because it was so boring. I mean, compared to if you get a young kid now who sort of likes Star Wars, I mean, then it's unlikely that they're going to like that or appreciate it. But I thought that was so simple, and just the idea of it, there's a space museum and these aliens happen to have it on a planet, but they took over the planet to set up their own museum, but that's not even their home planet where they're from. That's just where they have their research and museum thing. And then how they appeared there, and then sort of there was just some weird disparity between them actually being able to be seen, add that element as well. And then there was just all this kind of suspense around it. And then you got those young guys with those strange eyebrows, which were the native aliens of the planet. That seems to have a theme. You get characters like that through the whole series. Then, when you've got them on the that planet with the big with the huge castle, when the TARDIS appears on the cliff, halfway down the cliff, and they've got to climb up to that big castle. And then you've got those guys who are doing the digging work in the tunnels on that place. They've got kind of strange, they look similar, they're a certain species. They've got they also, those people, when they had those invisible, on that planet, they've got those invisible aliens in the jungle, and the Daleks are trying to take over them. Or they have taken over them, and those guys from the other planet and that woman, they're kind of look a little bit similar like that. So they were doing the same sort of thing with those young guys. That I really, 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 really like that Space Museum program. I thought it was just well balanced. It was it wasn't tied into any of the other episodes particularly. It was just a standalone episode. Well, not episode, standalone series of programs for one show, but it was a great idea, and it was so simple. But the suspense in it was just the atmospheric suspense in it. I thought it was great, and episodes like that I really enjoyed all the way through. And also, you see, because I haven't seen it before, so there were some of the missing ones, right? And then I realised, oh yeah, they've got some cartoons and they're stylized as well. So they filled some of the missing episodes in with these stylized cartoons. So I got to see all the original episodes and the whole series in the proper order, but also with these stylized cartoons in, the Dalek one in the first series with Troughton, right? Now that was brilliant. That cartoon with the Daleks in, with Patrick Troughton, is absolutely amazing. It's probably one of the best cartoons that I've ever seen in my whole life. Just the style of it, the art style of it. Now, some people aren't going to like that, right? Some people won't like it, but it's like a painting. How many people like art, right? Only a certain number of people like art, and then once you've got that group of people who like art, you've got art critics, and they argue about art and discuss art, what is good or bad about art. So the thing is that, without the critics, you're taking away half of the people who are interested in art, because half of the people who like art, half of the people who are interested in art don't like a lot of it, right? So the fact that you've got these Doctor Who cartoons which are stylized, and apparently some people don't like it, well, that's great, because then you've created art critics, and so therefore the totality of all of the people who like it and all the people who hate it, you've got your art, you people who are interested in the art, right? Either they love it or they hate it, but they've got an opinion on it. Now, if no one was interested in it at all whatsoever, then that would be terrible, right? So I think that if those cartoons have created a lot of critics, then I think that's a brilliant thing. It would be interesting when you actually get to find out these people, to get talking to these people who were supposedly meant to be Doctor Who fans, but they didn't like those cartoons. It would be quite interesting to actually delve deeper into really why they didn't like it. And I think that if you ask the right questions and find out, I think actually you'll find out that they didn't actually hate it that much. And to be honest, some of those cartoons which have replaced the missing series are actually better than the original program, right? Some of them have actually improved it and are an improvement on the original program to tell the story. And in fact, I think they actually tell the story better than the original program. So when you've got like the Dalek one with Patrick Troughton in, right? That presentment of that Dalek story, I think that it's better than the original series, but some people might, stick to the original series, which is, I think, why it's pretty cool to have, one of the original episodes and then the cartoons, right, to follow the story. But that's just what I think. So, I think those cartoons were brilliant. Some of them, they're all different. I like it that they've done them all a different stylization, and even one episode to the other is changed style. I kind of like that because it's sort of a bit of variety. Some of them aren't as good as the others. Some of the stylizations are not that good. Like, I wouldn't have said that the Abominable Snowman one is that great, but it's still a good cartoon. It's as good as, anything like, Thundercats or He-Man or anything like that. It's as good as that, if not better. But some of them, I would say, are outstandingly good. Like the Dalek one, the Power of the Daleks is that Power of the Daleks is not just good; it's actually outstanding. It's very good. But then again, if they did all of them exactly in the style of that, then would it spoil the fact that the thing that makes it unique? That's the thing, right? So watching it all through from Patrick Troughton and then to John Pertwee, right, and then all the way through until we get to Sylvester McCoy. I just thought they're all great. They're all really good. There are some which are not as good, and there are some which are a bit boring. But generally, I have to say that watching it in 2025, when I never saw them all, right, I hadn't seen them, I actually enjoyed watching it more than watching the new ones, right? I think they're better. Just better stories. They're better stories. They're better ideas. In fact, well, that's where the ideas come from, right? And there's just, in some of them now, there's just too much going on, and it's almost kind of got to go upstage something. But what's the point? It's like it's like that Solo film. It's just like it's more of a show off sort of thing. Not to say that there aren't one or two good ideas in there, and some of the earlier Aliens, it's hit and miss. You get some of those aliens, and they're actually really, 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 really brilliant. And then some of them aren't as good at all. And then there are one or two terrible ideas in there, but generally. And the one thing I noticed about the old series is, right, we're in 2025 now, and I'm sort of like, you could say that I'm middle-aged, I guess, right? I like to think younger to middle-aged, right? The women are just better. I mean, I actually, most of the women in the older ones are actually attractive. They're like attractive women, right? And I don't think that they are as much in the new ones. Now, there's got to be something going on there, right? And, it comes down to this diversity and inclusion. So have the BBC got rules now where it's like only not allowed to have attractive women in there because it's not fair on women who aren't attractive? Or it's like, it's not diversity and inclusion. So this is how culture and, the law and things like that have changed, right? But, I mean, the thing is, I want to watch Doctor Who with attractive women in it, right? I much prefer watching Doctor Who with attractive women in it. You know, it's more enjoyable to watch it. So, you know, this is the thing. But the BBC says, "Oh, we can't do that. You're not allowed to do that now because of diversity and inclusion." It's like, well, what's the you know? You're meant to be entertaining me. Put an entertainment program on, right? Oh no, we're not here to entertain you now. It's political. We've got to have diversity and inclusion. So, you know, it's like, you know, things have changed. But, you know, I wouldn't have said that it wasn't diversity and inclusion back then because they've got plenty of, you know, to be honest, there are plenty of characters in that programme. You know, they've got, you know, they've got all sorts of different ethnical people in there. Through the old series, it's not like they don't have any in there. So, you know, it's a bit peculiar. But, you know, it's not just that. Wouldn't it be interesting if they had a rule which said that, you know, okay, we've got this, you know, diversity and inclusion, and then we've got to have, like, you know, we have to have women as the main characters. What happens if they had a rule that says, oh, it's not allowed to have too many special effects in, right? What about, like, you know, wouldn't it be great if the BBC said, you know, oh, it can't have too much action in it and too much, like, flashy things going on and too many special effects flashing in front of you and just, like, you know, action, flashing lights. Or how about, you know, you can't have a too big TARDIS, you know? This is the thing. They used to have the broom cupboard before with Philip Schofield in, you know, to make everyone who had a terrace house think that, you know, it was cool to have a small box. But now it's kind of like they're trying to encourage people, oh, you should want a bigger house, you know, you should want more things, nicer things in life and all these things, right? But where's, like, the you know, they seem to have rejected this diversity and inclusion when it comes to poor people, right? Oh, no, you know, we don't have too much for poor people. Although I suppose that with John Bishop, they had, like, the Anfield Stadium, didn't they, with the terrace houses and the stadium at the end of the road. So I suppose that was a bit of diversity and inclusion for houses, I suppose. But generally, I think the whole show is trying to push. It's definitely capitalist. It's a capitalist show now. And one thing, you know, by having one guy write entire series, they're getting a lot of executive power and control, and what they're doing with their writing is they're weaving all their stories together and saying, oh, this is a relationship of, you know, these Cybermen to these people, or these to that. They're getting a lot of executive control and power over the Doctor Who world. Whereas if you only have one writer who does one episode, right, and he comes in with fresh ideas, then a different one, you're not having one person who's, like, getting to effectively dictate or write what the Doctor Who world is. In fact, they become the whole creator of the whole Doctor Who world, and notice how they always have their characters are always intermingling with other previous characters and Doctor Who's and so forth. They're getting a hell of a lot of executive power and dictatorship to say this is this and that's that, and these characters know this character and this happened and that happened and so forth and so forth. Where when you're getting, you know, guest producers or guest directors in and so forth, you know, they're just, you know, having their own go at a story, and then someone else comes in and has a go at a story, and it's like put together by. And I think that's the good thing about the earlier ones, you know. It kept it, you know, that's where you get diverse. That's diversity. How can it be diversity and inclusion if you've only got one guy writing the whole thing for ages and another guy? Where's the diversity and inclusion in the different writers and different producers, right? That's a good question. You need to challenge the BBC on that. And you know, you see, in the newer ones since the year 2000 onwards, they've gone for these kind of like younger sort of pop idol sort of characters, companions who are more like sort of teenage pin-up posters, and they mix them with doctors who are a little bit more like, you know, eccentric, quintessential Cambridge, Oxford, you know, quirks, like, you know, the English Doctor Who character who's meant to be, you know, slightly eccentric but odd, right? Mixed with, like, trying to mix it with a sort of, like, mainstream English pop star culture. I don't think the women in the older ones, you know, you could say that maybe they're a little bit like, some of them might have been Beatle fans or something like that. But they're, you know, you've got, like, you know, they might be scientists or, you know, just people like, you know, school teachers and things like that, you know. I don't think that it was necessarily, they weren't pitched as pop star pin-up. And they definitely tried to have this, like, this is how the mainstream takes over things. The more modern Doctor Who's definitely are, it's turned into more pop star pin-up kind of thing. And I don't think that back in the day when it had the annuals, it was like that. It was still definitely, they had this kind of, it's always had an artistic flair to it, of art. It has got some artistic flair in it, in some of it, but I think it gets whited out or overshadowed by the just action for the sake of action, you know, things going on for the sake of things going on, or special effects for the sake of special effects. But, you know, if people like that, then fair enough. But is that maybe what Doctor Who is? This is the thing. So, and as for what's going to happen with it in the future, I'm not the greatest fan of Billie Piper, and, you know, having a character like her even, I just think, you know, it seems to me that the BBC are a bunch of gits. It's like the most unpopular thing that you could possibly do or dislike. They always know, they've got this thing where, like, if there's something that people don't like, they have this mission where, oh, we've got to make it so they like it, or what can we do to make people like this, or are they trying to correct the situation or something, or, you know, it's like, you know, you're supposed to do stuff what people want and what they like, not what people don't want to see. And this is why you're getting a lot of these fans of Doctor Who, like this guy here, they're actually coming out and saying that, you know, there's a lot of junk in there. It's a lot of junk for the sake of junk. Pop pin-ups are pop pin-ups, right? You know, pop star boy bands are boy bands. You know, like, why do you have to have pop stars in Doctor Who? Or why do you have to make it into a pop pin-up thing? It's like, you know, aren't they satisfied with being a pop star? Or aren't they satisfied with being, you know, this or that? It's like, you know, you might as well have fucking take that in Doctor Who. But they do that to be annoying. It's like, oh, we'll have Gary Barlow in then, you know. It's like, no, that this is a thing. Please don't have Gary Barlow in there. You know, oh yeah, we'll have it, you know, turn up on Coronation Street. You know, maybe they've done that. Maybe I've missed the episode. Maybe they've actually been there and done that and had the TARDIS turn up on Coronation Street, you know, with the music playing. That would be a Christmas special, wouldn't it? So, who am I to say anything about Doctor Who now? Because, you know, I'm not a Doctor Who fan. There are lots of Doctor Who fans who really like the classic ones and don't like the new ones, and there are people who really like all of it. But I would say, I think the BBC should be, if the BBC are knocking out all these fan programmes, why aren't they doing why haven't they introduced voting on it, actually, on the BBC iPlayer website, you know? You would have thought that, actually, you know, like on YouTube, when you can like or dislike something, maybe this is a bad idea, but, or at least not actually on the episodes. I'm not saying, like, each have thumbs up or thumbs down and have a number on there counting, because, you know, I think this is a problem with YouTube, social points, but at least maybe, you know, at the end of the series, they could do some kind of questionnaire to say, you know, they could do I think when they finish the Doctor Who series now, because it's actually meant to be for the people who like Doctor Who and who are fans, you know, that's the only thing that they haven't let them do. You know, they want them to come down on the sets, meet the stars, come down with their sonic screwdrivers, all turn up at conventions, or meet all the doctors, and watch all these behind the scenes things. The only thing that the only thing they haven't done is let them vote on, who should be the next doctor, right? Or, or even have a competition, submit, submitting scripts, have a script competition, and then let everyone vote on it, what it should be, and then maybe just have one of these producers, whichever one gets voted in, whichever ones people like the most, then he can smooth it out and make it presentable, for TV. Obviously, the person's idea and story that all the fans vote that they would like the most, then obviously they get someone in who can adapt it into filming schedule, blah blah blah, etc. Right? That's that's what it should be like. In fact, you see, the BBC is actually meant to be license fee payers. The license fee payers pay for it, right? So, I would love to see the actual people vote on, what character, what type of doctor they want, or who it should be, or whatever, or at least, present 10 different ones and let them vote on it or something like that, right? And as for the classic series, well, I actually would prefer them to not make any new series until they've finished filling in all of the missing episodes from the previous ones, either by 3D animation or 2D animation, etc. Because this is the thing, right? The BBC erased those; they wiped them. And what I've realised is, just a minute, the taxpayer paid for them to be made, right? And this probably is my penultimate revelation, right? So the public, or the license fee payer, paid for those being made, right? So they actually, really, it was created and made and paid for to exist. But then the BBC went and fucking wiped it. So did they really steal them from the people who'd paid for it to be made to exist? I think they actually did really steal them, even if it was supposedly meant to have been a common practice at the time. Because, how do they decide which and which gets done, and who's pulling the strings from up above and this and that, right? So I actually think the BBC should, before they're gallivanting off, splashing out all these massive amounts of money and approving these projects, the war between the land and the sea and Torchwood and all these spin-offs, Lost in Paradise, Extra Paradise, Death in Paradise, Back from Paradise, Pudding of Paradise, endless spin-off shows. Why don't they actually get all these missing episodes remade some way or other? Because I actually think the ones that have been done, I like them. I think it's actually really interesting to go back for the old series and have some of them filled in with cartoons or different styles and all this mixture of stuff, some in black and white or whatever. I think that's actually, I think that they owe that to the public, that, the license fee payer paid for them to be created, but then they went and fucking wiped them all, right? So before they even make one more series, fair enough if they're going to do a Christmas special, but, I actually think that it's more of a priority to get all of those actually remade and filled in than to even do a full new series, particularly when there is a very, very large number of people saying that I've heard say, a lot of it's junk, right? When they're already, they're doing all this, land and the sea thing, or this and that, I think they should. I'm not a fan, and I can't speak for all Doctor Who fans, but as a English person, the average English person, pick somebody out at random. If it was me, right, from the country, and I had an opinion on it, and I'm like, oh, I'm English, and I know what Doctor Who is. I wasn't an obsessive fan on it when I grew up, but I know what Doctor Who is, and I've sort of been watching it, and I've got something to say about it. It's a show. It's an English-made show. I would say that get all those back ones filled in before you make another series, because the people actually paid for those to be made. Where are they? Where are our programs? You fucking erased them all. So like we've been gypped off basically, and actually that is meant to be what Doctor Who is. And to be honest, it's like, I was looking at the screen now. I've got both screens open from the John Bishop ones and from the new ones, right? Okay, like I like the Well one, that was great. Lucky Day one, I wasn't too keen on that. The Lux, that had some good ideas in it, but I wouldn't have said that the entire thing was, and there was certain, there was some elements of some of them which were alright. I did like the Halloween Apocalypse one. The whole story of it was a bit strange when it was like dipping from one bit to another bit, and it was sort of like they had all these memory losses and stuff like that, right? But I probably haven't enjoyed it as much. I think I probably enjoyed that Halloween Apocalypse sort of bit of it, seeing it just before Christmas, and then actually having a Christmas special at the end of it. Oh yeah, there's the storage room was really good as well, and that wasn't too much action. That didn't have too much action in it. They weren't just using loads and loads of action. On the Blue Yonder one as well, that was kind of okay. That was a bit scary, a bit freaky. I liked that. Actually, those ones were okay. But I just like watching the programme. I don't really want to see all this. For me, all of this behind-the-scenes stuff spoils the programme, because they're trying to make it that's what it's not actually about the programme anymore. It's like the programme's like actually a minor part of it, or the less important part of it than all of the actors themselves are more important than the show that they make, right? Or the behind-the-scenes thing. It's I think, in my opinion, I think that the Power of the Daleks cartoon is probably better or more valuable in what growing up as a child through all my whole life, since knowing that Doctor Who existed, from TARDISes to K9 to seeing all the McCoys, and then watching from 2000 onwards the odd episode, and now seeing all these now. It's actually, I never read the comics. I know there were a lot of people who there was a lot of cool stories in the comics which never got made into films, but I can see the comic tie-in in it and how the comics are quite important to it. That Power of the Daleks, right, is outstandingly brilliant. It actually, there's some really great comedy in that cartoon, with Troughton like playing the flute and stuff like that, which I think is absolutely hilarious. And it's just this, like the niche style of it with certain facial expressions and stuff like that is just, and the fact that it's like one of the classic stories, it actually shows how good the stories were. Now there were a few things about it which I wasn't happy about. Like they were just putting the Daleks in the bottom of the Dalek container when we know they're supposed to be in the top part with like the little controller and that looking out of it. So there were a few things like that, but I suppose that there's also an element of mystery, because it leaves the question, well, why is that? And a critic could say, that's rubbish. It's a lot of tosh. Why is that? But also there's like kind of a mystery element to it as well, I suppose. But there is some actually, the thing with that cartoon is there's some really great, interesting characters, like the scientists in there. There's some really good characters. And then you've got the guy who goes out and, shoots the Earth inspector, which is quite mysterious and so forth. I actually think that that Space Museum could be an absolutely brilliant cartoon, but the thing is that it doesn't need to be. That Space Museum one isn't even in colour, right? And that is I actually it might actually be my favourite of all Doctor Who's, that Space Museum, and I don't know why. There's just it's quite it's just a nice clean cut series. It's just got just standard, it's got a few different variations of aliens in. There's nothing too odd or peculiar. There's a few strange things happening. It's got a mystery element about it. I just kind of like it. It's quite it's good. It's easy watching. Some of them are difficult now to watch and difficult to follow. I think when it gets too difficult to follow and it's hard to follow the story or know what's going on unless you're really, really paying attention or watch it back a few times. I think that it's definitely got too much action in it, or it's getting too silly when you can't follow it properly. If it gets too complicated. And that's why I think that, for example, the Power of the Daleks isn't too difficult to follow. And for that reason, I mean, that Power of the Daleks cartoon is probably one of my favourite Doctor Who things that I've ever watched, I would have thought. And the thing with the thing about the Pertwee was actually he did a lot of action scenes and he was good at fighting. They had him doing quite a lot of fisticuffs and stuff like that. But you get the nostalgia from Wurzel Gummidge as well with Pertwee, I suppose, tying as well. But the Pertwee ones always had really attractive women in it as well. But they were all but even now in 2025, he's got this cool fashion style element to it, which they're trying to keep now with some of the they're trying to do cool costumes still now and trying to keep sort of the costumes in sort of to be quite funky, but some of the backdrops are overdoing it, I think, so I guess I don't really know if I've got what to say, but am I looking forward? I'm disappointed there isn't a Doctor Who on this Christmas, but I guess I'd rather there not be one on than there be a rubbish one on. So now that they said that they're going to do one next Christmas, it's like, I don't know whether I'm looking forward to it or not, but I wouldn't have been looking forward to a whole new series if it was just going to be kind of more general, stuff thrown at it. I'd much rather see the BBC seriously fill in some of the missing episodes and advertise and promote them as well, and put them on the website. Not like I don't want to see them like do the DVD and then you got to buy it for £15. That's not fair. Those shows were supposed to be on there. People paid for those being made and they fucking wiped them, right? We want to see, like, on the next up-to-date Doctor Who page, it should have the fill-in episodes, and when you click on it, maybe it should have a link back to the other website, where it fills in too, so you can see the whole story. They wipe those when the license fee payer paid for making, right? And the BBC needs to prioritise that because it's something which the public paid for. The public paid for it, and the public paid for it being created and made. And it's actually a more importance. It's got more importance to Doctor Who as a thing which exists and which is meant to be the whole point of it existing, right? Than any future series. And I'm not knocking these Robot Revolution and Lux and The Well and Lucky Day at all. I'm not trying to rubbish it. But what I'm saying is, if you have not yet written anything and there's not yet anything being written, what is the point of, at this stage, just making another Robot Revolution, Lux, The Well, Lucky Day, the story in the engine, blah, 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 another 6 or 8 episodes, for the sake of just conjuring up a load of episodes to have a load more junk, unless you've got some other political motivation behind them for doing them, which I think they have. But I think that at this point, when they're splashing out all this money on these other stuff, like, you know, they clearly obviously have more importance on wanting to do, you know, they're doing this, like, you know, the story between the land and the sea or whatever. Doctor Who as a existing franchise, it's much more important to the Doctor Who franchise to fill in those missing episodes that they fucking wiped, however they decide to do them. Whether they decide to do them in 2D or 3D, or even like modern series. I think if they don't want to do them in 2D, and if the BBC are completely opposed to doing them in 2D stylized because people are grumbling about it, even though I think The Power of the Daleks is probably the best thing that I watched last Christmas. I really, really enjoyed that more than any of the other ones. And like, I think that they could, why don't they, that's one thing that they haven't done yet. So, like, when they're filling in these old series, like, they're coming up with these ideas, like, hey, let's do it like 3D. So they've got, like, you know, the Celestial Toymaker. Hey, this Celestial Toymaker will do it in, like, 3D, right? You know, like Toy Story or whatever. And then they've got, like, The Power of the Daleks. Hey, we'll do this in, like, a really kind of Art Nouveau comic book style cartoon, which has got some really cool expressions, and we'll make it that it's the expressiveness makes the comedy, right? So why don't they do like, hey, why don't we actually use all this modern stuff, like the Robot Revolution and Lux and Halloween Apocalypse and War of the Suntans, whatever, this modern process we've got now, even though Disney have pulled out, and actually fill the old ones in using that with normal proper filming and sets. Like, what would it be like if we'd have done the old story with the characters new? Now, the only problem with that is that they don't have William Hartnell, and they don't have, you know, Pertwee, and they don't have the other Doctors. But that means that there's only the lead character or the main character to fill in, right? So, I mean, that's actually a little bit like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, isn't it? You know, when you had Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the whole point was having a cartoon character with a normal thing, and they've done that a little bit like that in the Lux thing. But I tell you what, there was one of the Jodie Whittaker interactive things, which I don't really want to have anything to do with the interactive stuff, really, or the fan stuff. But there was this TARDIS that they did, and they had sort of a cartoon version of Jodie Whittaker just walking around in the TARDIS. That was actually done quite good. I liked how they did the style of it and how they sort of turned her into that character. That was really cool. That would have worked for a full episode, definitely, and that is creatable and doable. So, if they use that technique and basis behind the fact that, hey, we could actually fill in some of those episodes, and those are the Doctors who aren't with us anymore, or, you know, have passed away, deceased, we could do them or recreate them in the same way that they recreate Jodie Whittaker or whatever. For that, when she was inside the TARDIS thing, because that really worked and it was really good. That's what I'd do. Or you could have the main character like that, and the rest of it with all of this kind of all this stuff, like, you know, what we've got in now, Vanquishers, Eve of the Daleks, Survivor the Flux, with normal backgrounds or whatever, or mix it in. There were actually a lot of ideas that you could do, or you could just get a lookalike. But then, you know, I suppose they've got loads of controversy over getting lookalikes in, if they wanted to get another Hartnell lookalike or another. But they've still got the original audio with them all, and I like it when they use the original audio, because it actually, I think it helps bring out the best of the story as well. You can, when there's an improvement in the picture and how the story's shown, like they did with the Savages. I definitely think that Savages was a huge improvement as well in the cartoon version compared to the previous one. So it actually helps improve on some of the stories and helps convey the story a lot better than it was conveyed originally. So that's what I'd actually like to see. I'd actually like to see all them start filling them in, all of the fill-ins that they didn't have, and actually maybe even do them like as if they were doing a brand new series and do it like the brand new series, but this is the fill-in for that episode and this is the fill-in for that one. And then what it'll do is, let's say that you go into the BBC and then the new series is out and you go into the website with the latest one, or they've put them into separate websites now for each of the separate ones. So if you had series 1, then you watch it, right, and then that might be some random fill-in which they didn't have because it's been erased. But then while we're waiting for the next episode or the next one, the next week, then people will then go and watch the whole of that series, right? They'll go watch it all, or which ones exist still, and they'll actually watch the ones that they do have, and then up to that one that's filled it in, or at least then wait to see the next part of it. So it could get a bit complicated on how you're going to display it on the website and how you're going to go about putting it in. But maybe it just has or maybe it was like take you back when you watch it, and then they just have a thing that you click on to go back to the classic series where it's fit in. I don't know. That's what I do, because I think that it's more important. Surely filling in those missing episodes has got to have a more priority and importance than coming up with a new one that hasn't even been written or existed yet. And I even think that has surely got more priority over that stupid War Between the Land and the Sea project, which is obviously going to be costing them loads of money. They shouldn't have done that. They're just getting what they want now. And what I think the fans want, this is the thing, right? The Doctor Who fans want to see those episodes that are missing because they've got a legal right to see them, because the people of England paid for them fucking making, right? And then they were taken away. But yet we paid for them being made and created, right? And that it's in fact, for all Doctor Who fans, I think that it's actually disgusting, outrageous, unfair, and bloody well greedy for any BBC director to put his hand on a piece of paper and sign off and approve all these fucking fancy projects like the War Between Land and the Sea, no matter what their motivations are behind it, and they are fucking political motivations. That's the BBC not being impartial, not being without bias. They're engaging in political activity to make a point about something or other, which they don't care to admit or disclose, but that is the real truth behind it, because it's relevant to what's happening now. Don't lie, right? Rather than, what do the Doctor Who fans actually want? Well, actually, the Doctor Who fans want to see those missing fucking episodes. That's what they want, right? But yet, someone's got a pen and they're signing on a bit of paper saying, hey, there's, X, whatever, hundreds of thousands or millions, go paint the town red and, make yourself your fucking, War Between the Land and the Sea, whatever, And then this basically gives all the Doctor Who fans whose, parents or grandparents have paid for all those episodes being made and existing, and no one can watch them because you got fucking wiped. So, it's a big fucking middle finger, isn't it? It's a big, middle finger to the fans. And I don't think it's about, what any of these scriptwriters or editors want, because who's Doctor Who meant to be for? It's meant to be for the people, So that's what I think about it. And, that I think most Doctor Who fans would probably appreciate seeing all those missing episodes if they're done good. But I think they can be done good, because this is the thing. You can make even that insect one, for example. That insect one, right? That is probably a lot better story than it comes across when you're watching it, because of the like sort of really, really pantomime, hard to believe set. If that was done in a stylized cartoon or even in 3D or something, that one actually could be really brilliant, because you've got these insects on an insect planet. You could actually make that one really, really interesting, and a lot more appreciative of the story than the original one, which was probably one of the weakest visual sets and the least believable visual sets, with the least intricate alien costumes. So, I mean, that's what I think. But this is basically the opinion of the average English person who's not a Doctor Who fan, but, you know, nevertheless, like, you know, has like the average opinion of someone in England who thinks what Doctor Who should be doing now, after they've actually, in 2025, had a fair evaluation of what it even actually is from the start to now, and watched it all, right? I think all those missing episodes should be sorted out, remade and filled in, and possibly even ones that are quite terrible backdrops, like the insect one, could actually be made to be absolutely outstandingly brilliant, like the Power of the Daleks cartoon, which that Power of the Daleks cartoon is just, it's so funny. It's just like when he's playing the flute, it's just like really, really funny comedy. I mean, it's got it's like completely and totally. I think that actually brings to life the whole feeling of. It's definitely got a sci-fi kind of thing to it, and I mean, I never read the comics, but I know there was a lot of people who really, really liked the comics. The people who read the comics must have liked those, but a lot of people didn't watch the comics. They didn't know that. They didn't know about it. But that's my opinion anyway. So, sci-fi guy, please, less of this boy band trying to... They're trying to put, you know, like, Top of the Pops into Doctor Who. But Doctor Who's not meant to be Top of the Pops. It's meant to be like an eccentric English guy with a sci-fi, comic-y style aspect to it, with an adventure. And it's not actually supposed to be kind of like watching Speed or Speed 2, or like, you know, Solo, some kind of like action thing. Which, you know, I don't even know how they got that idea for Torchwood. I think it's because they wanted to try and get some more Americans involved in it. But, you know, this is an American guy, and he says they're spitting out junk at the moment. He seems to like the original series as well, so, you know.